today. Following that at 2 o'clock is episode number 11 of Ira Gershwin by Michael Owen. Stay with us for these readings and more.
The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from USA Today for Friday, May 22nd, 2026, the kickoff of the Memorial Day weekend. Your reader for this hour is Chet Walczyk. I'm glad you were able to join us. And we start with the USA Today weekend section and an appropriate story. It's a little long, but I think if you stay with me, you'll find it interesting. 80 years later, Dutch still tends soldiers' graves. Volunteers aim to connect families of fallen Americans. By 1947, some 18,000 American soldiers had been buried at the Netherlands American Cemetery in Margarethen. At the end of World War II, the Dutch shared a simple message: leave your boys with us. We will watch over them like our own forever. They vowed to care for the graves of those who fell while restoring Dutch freedom. In an extraordinary act of gratitude, every single grave had been adopted by local families by Memorial Day 1946. The United States repatriated about 10,000 of those remains between 1947 and 51. About 8,300 graves are remaining, along with 1,700 markers for the missing, 10,000 men, more or less. Today, Dutch adopters, and now their children and grandchildren, visit the graves, lay flowers on birthdays and holidays, and learn the soldiers' stories. Of those 10,000, there are 8,400 adopters who still do not know the families of the soldiers they honor. With the passage of time, many American descendants are not even aware that a family member is buried at Margarethen and or that someone has cared for that grave for more than 80 years. A group of dedicated volunteers is working hard to change that. Robert M. Edsall is the New York Times best-selling author of 4 nonfiction books, including Rescuing Da Vinci, Saving Italy, and The Monuments Men, the latter of which served as the basis for Academy Award recipient George Clooney's 2014 film. Recognizing this problem, he launched the Forever Promise Project to connect families of fallen Americans with the Dutch grave adopters. His latest book, Remember Us, tells the story of this extraordinary Dutch gift to America. Edsall described it as a remarkable story of remembrance, gratitude, and grace set against the backdrop of the most destructive and deadly war in history. Edsall's counterpart on the Dutch side is Frans Robrooks, Secretary of the Foundation for Adopting Graves at the American Cemetery Margarethen. Frans published a history of the cemetery in 2019 in Gen magazine, the leading Dutch publication focused on genealogy and family history. Both works were invaluable in developing this story. Margarethen is in Limburg, the southernmost tip of the Netherlands, separating Belgium from Germany. American forces liberated the province in September 1944, but at a high cost. When Allied troops pushed eastward into Germany, thousands of dead soldiers were left along the routes of advance. The Army needed a cemetery as soon as possible. Captain Joseph Schoeman, commanding officer of the 611th Graves Registration Company, was asked and tasked to find a location. He later described the moment he found about 65 acres in Margarethen. When a local official remarked that it was excellent farmland, Schoeman replied, "Even the best ground is not good enough for our dead." On a wet November 11, 1944, men of the 611th gathered for the first burial. Corporal John Singer, a 25-year-old North Carolina native, was laid to rest in Section A, Row 1, Grave 1. Showman's unit was made up of white soldiers and officers. Their mission was to identify bodies, collect personal effects, and generally supervise the burials. The dirty work was performed by segregated black units. The men of the 960th and 3136 Quartermaster Service Companies dug the graves. As Alexis Smith wrote for History.com in August, Army trucks arrived in droves, filled with bodies, and African American soldiers stood in the freezing mud ready to unload them. Alabama native Jefferson Wiggins was the first sergeant of the 960th and the last surviving veteran who buried the dead at Margareton. Before he died in 2013, he said, "So there we were, a group of black Americans confronted with all these dead white Americans. When they were alive, we couldn't sit in the same room." From liberation in September until the final offensive began in February, Limburg became one large military camp. New units trained there while combat-seasoned veterans recharged batteries for the battles to come. Many local residents invited soldiers into their homes. As a result, a wartime bond developed between the GIs and the Dutch families who adopted them. It was heartbreaking on both sides when the time came to say goodbye. As casualties mounted early in 1945, residents of the town felt an overwhelming sense of helplessness as they watched trucks delivering the bodies of young Americans, some of whom had recently lived in their homes, to the newly built cemetery. They wanted to honor the men, but didn't know how. Showman suggested they decorate all graves with flowers on the upcoming Memorial Day. The Margareton Citizens Committee was founded that evening, the predecessor of today's Foundation for Adopting Graves at the American Cemetery, Margareton. Regional newspapers published a call for flowers. Showman's trucks collected bouquets throughout South Limburg. On May 31, 1945, not a single grave was flowerless. The first grave adoptions were informal, by Dutch families who had housed individual soldiers who were later killed. When word came that their soldiers had fallen, they would immediately go to the cemetery to claim that grave. The Citizens Committee had a bigger vision, assigning all graves for adoption. Adopters were to visit the grave regularly and send photos to next of kin. Franz Roberts wrote, "The Americans agreed and initially provided home addresses of relatives." By the end of summer 1945, the American officers most supportive of the grave adoption program had rotated home. The replacements did not have the same emotional connection to the process. In Remember Us, Etzel wrote, "They saw the cemetery as American property, to be safeguarded, not shared. They discouraged the Dutch from thinking of the cemetery as an open memorial. They also stopped providing family contact information." At the same time, however, the need for that contact information grew exponentially. Letters from the United States made it clear that the Dutch adopters could help soften the grief of those who had lost a loved one. In August 1945, Life magazine published a letter from the mayor of Maastricht, the provincial capital about 8 miles from Margareton. Baron Michels van Kessenich thanked U.S. soldiers for liberating the Netherlands. Mabel Rose File, a 26-year-old widow from Alabama, responded. Her husband, Private Warren File, was buried at Margareton. Touched by the mayor's words, she made a simple request. "I will be grateful to you all the days of my life if you can get me a snapshot of his grave. My husband and I were so young, and he was my whole life." This request caused the Margareton grave adoption program to explode. Thousands more Dutch citizens volunteered. The mayor's wife, Emily, was so affected by Mabel File's letter that she took the photograph herself. Deeply moved, Emily wrote to President Harry Truman on September 27, 1945, saying, "Now that only your fallen heroes remain in our soil, we want to establish a lasting tie between their relatives and our people. There is one difficulty to surmount. My urgent request: how do I contact someone who has the authority to hand over a registration list of all those buried here? I am a mother," she continued, "and if it should happen that my boys were buried in American soil, I should be so grateful if an American mother would send me a photograph and should go there sometime in my place." Someone in the chain of command prevailed upon the decision makers not to grant that request. Some officials feared adopters might use the information to financially exploit grieving American families. As Jeff Stouffer wrote in April's American Legion magazine, there is not a single known case of exploitation relating to the grave adoption program. By Memorial Day, 1946, all 18,000 graves had been adopted. Emily said there were 3,000 more requests than there were graves. Newspapers across the world reported that 40,000 people had come to Margareton to pay their respects, more than 2 visitors for every man buried there. The total population of Margareton was about 2,500 people. Even Maastricht only claimed 75,000 residents. 8 of those graves belonged to Medal of Honor recipients. By war's end, some 300,000 American soldiers were buried in cemeteries worldwide. Truman told American families they could bring their loved ones home if they desired. This was often a gut-wrenching decision. About 60%, or 170,000 plus, families accepted the offer. Almost 120,000 chose to keep their loved ones where they were, including 6 of the 8 who earned the Medal of Honor. Only 2 Medal of Honor recipients were returned. This repatriation dropped the number of graves at Margareton from about 18,000 in 1945 to 8,300 there today. That number does not include those on the Wall of the Missing. Many of those graves are still tended by the 3rd or 4th generation of the original adopters. In 2017, Franz Robeck's 86-year-old mother, Gerda, said, "I told my daughter when I pass away, please take care of the grave, and you have to tell your children that they should take over the grave when you die, because I want our soldiers to stay in the family." Peters, a Medal of Honor recipient from Rhode Island, was one of those who stayed in Margareton. "As a child, I asked my parents why Uncle George was still in Europe," said his niece, Joan Parento. Evidently, his parents had not gotten over his death. A return of a casket and another funeral would have been too much for them to bear. This desire to avoid reopening old wounds was one of the reasons most often cited by those who did not bring their loved ones back to the United States. Other families felt their soldier belonged with the men with whom he had fought and died. Because the Dutch people had already begun adopting graves in 1945, sending letters and photos of the flowers they placed, many American families realized their sons were not alone. In early March 1947, Boston University professor Edwin Booth wrote a story entitled "An American Visits the Grave of His Son Overseas." Booth had taken his family to Margareton. They gained great comfort from the visit, and their description of Margareton and the adoption program was published worldwide. He encouraged families to leave their sons where they were. Rosemary and Frederick Leary, readers of the Providence Journal, were the sister and father of Lieutenant Frederick D. Legary, who had been killed February 8, 1945. They received word he had been buried in Margareton. They sent a letter to the editor wanting to express a deep appreciation for you publishing an article on Margareton. They had viewed Margareton as a cold, alien place until they read Booth's story. Today, Margareten became real to us. There are farms and fields nearby, warm winds, well-trimmed grass, and flowers brought by the Dutch. It's a peaceful place where a soldier can rest with his comrades. Since 1949, the American Battle Monuments Commission has managed 14 overseas cemeteries dedicated to American dead, including Margareten. When these cemeteries were first established, they were run by the U.S. Army. When the grave adoption program began at Margareten, the military leaders were sympathetic to the desires of American families to get photos of their loved ones' graves. On request, they gave Dutch adopters names and addresses of relatives to whom these photos would be sent. But post-war leadership would stop providing that information. Before this door closed, about 20% of the adopters were linked with American relatives. Over the decades, Dutch volunteers have added links, one at a time, bringing that number to about 25%, still far short of the 100% goal envisioned. Also, as original next of kin American parents, siblings, and spouses died, the knowledge of the burial site was not always passed down to grandchildren or great-grandchildren. The issue became more complicated with the passage of the U.S. Privacy Act of 1974, which regulates the disclosure of personally identifiable information. Providing addresses of American families to foreign citizens without explicit consent would likely violate these protections. To this day, the American Battle Monuments Commission continues to withhold next of kin information from grave adopters, citing privacy laws and concerns about exploitation of grieving relatives. So here's the bottom line. As diligent and hardworking as the Forever Promise Project may be, they face an uphill battle if forced to rely only on outreach from American families to them. One can liken that process to the lost money programs in virtually every state. The National Association of Unclaimed Property Administrators says there are billions of dollars of unclaimed funds or property waiting to be returned to their owners. The passive or reactive method of reuniting owners with their property is to advertise to the general public. You may be entitled to money you don't know about. Register at this website to find out. This likely goes in one ear and out the other of most people because they don't think they are owed money and they can't be bothered with the hassle. However, in smaller communities, publishing lists of names of those who are actually owed money in local media tends to be highly effective because of the potential for recognition. Neighbors and family members often recognize names on lists and notify the rightful owners. Putting the names out there produces more responses than waiting for someone to find themselves in a database. The Forever Promise Project is fully aware of this conundrum and is seeking ways to become more proactive with their search. They have been forced into a situation where making additional connections depends on the knowledge that a relative is or may be buried at Margareten. If you have a relative who died in Europe during World War II, he may be buried at Margareten, Netherlands. If so, please contact and connect with the Forever Promise Project. To search the database or learn more, visit foreverpromise.org/thedatabase. Again, that is visit foreverpromise.org/thedatabase. Who knew? That's very, very touching and telling story. You are listening to reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time comes in at 19 minutes after the hour. And we continue with the opening session. Surgeon General issues screen time advisory. Oh my. The U.S. Surgeon General's office wants you to crack down on screen time for your kids, according to a newly published advisory. Released May 20th, Even as President Trump's nominee for Surgeon General awaits confirmation, the Harms of Screen Use Bulletin warns that children and teens are spending more time on their digital devices than sleeping or attending school. The report emphasizes much of what is already known, and some that is still being studied, about the detriments of too much screen time on developing minds. Much like the American Academy of Pediatrics guidelines, it lays out both the harms and similar recommendations for parents and caregivers looking to understand and mitigate their children's use of electronic devices. The advisory links excessive and compulsive screen use to poor sleep and school performance, mental health issues like anxiety and depression, behavioral and social issues, substance abuse, and developmental disruptions. Poor language, educational, and health outcomes follow early and frequent exposures to not only social media or phones, but also tablets, computers, games, apps, and even television, it reports. Social media is only one aspect of this ongoing screen time problem. Behavior patterns involving gaming, online gambling, and other forms of virtual interaction are emerging, said Health and Human Services Secretary RFK Jr. in the opening to the report. While screen use can have some benefits, the evidence of a range of risks to children's overall mental and physical health is mounting, he said. Live real life is the motto of the advisory, calling on young people and the people in their greater circles to make a push against excess screen use and replace it with real-life activities. A toolkit published with the report suggests that schools, healthcare providers, and even policymakers can get involved in a series of action items, some of which include families creating healthy media plans that apply to both children and adults in the household, schools implementing bell-to-bell ban policies to limit or eliminating multitasking during school hours and dedicating instructional time to media literacy, healthcare providers asking questions about screen usage in annual well child visits and suggesting healthy parameters, policymakers passing laws that demand child safety and privacy protection and funding research about mental and physical health outcomes related to screen time, and tech companies prioritizing child safety and privacy and designing platforms and features that do so. A general guideline for determining appropriate screen time is age, according to the report, which detailed the following parameters. Children under 18 months old should have no screen time. Children under 6 should have less than 1 hour per day. Children 6 to 18 should have only up to 2 hours daily, a significant departure from the 8+ hours teens 13 to 18 currently average. The advisory also offers tips for establishing these healthier screen time habits in the form of what is called the 5 Ds. 1. Discuss healthy screen use with household members, including having young people reflect on what they do online and how it makes them feel. 2. Do model the healthy screen use behaviors you would like to see. Be conscientious about how much time you spend on screens and what type of content you consume. When using screens, do so together. 3. Delay screen time from the earliest age as long as possible, and then establish age-appropriate limits on screen use and types of content. Different devices can be introduced at different times. 4. Divert and redirect attention from screens to other healthy activities, such as physical activity. Prioritize completion of tasks like chores, homework, music, or sports before screen use. And disconnect from screens regularly and schedule family daily screen-free time, such as a family dinner. The report was compiled by a series of HHS staffers in the absence of a Surgeon General. Trump's current pick, breast radiologist and Fox News contributor Dr. Nicole Saphier, is awaiting a confirmation hearing. She is third on the line of controversial nominees. And you are listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 25 minutes after the hour. And here's one we might all remember. I certainly remember seeing this in our house as I was growing up. This famous beer is about to be brewed for the last time. Oh no, oh no, no. Final 80 barrels of Schlitz to be produced tomorrow, May 23rd. Schlitz beer is about to be brewed for the last time. Wisconsin Brewing Company, with permission from Schlitz's owner, Pabst Brewing Company, announced it will brew a final 80-barrel batch tomorrow at its Verona brewery. The batch will be brewed using Schlitz's specifications dating to 1948, according to the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. The company was founded in 1849 in a Milwaukee tavern before later expanding, and at one time becoming America's largest brewer. Kirby Nelson with Wisconsin Brewing Company said he wanted the brand to go out with dignity and respect, according to the Journal-Sentinel. Pabst Brewing Company stopped brewing Schlitz months ago, reported local TV station WQOW. The final brew on May 23rd is a throwback to Schlitz's glory days, Nelson said, adding that it is Wisconsin Brewing Company's love letter to our state. In an emailed statement to USA Today, Zach Nadil, Pabst's head of brand strategy, said, "Unfortunately, we have seen continued increase in our costs to store and ship certain products and have had to make the tough choice to place Schlitz Premium on hiatus. Any brand or packaging configuration that is put on hiatus is still a cherished part of our history and hopefully our future. We continually look for opportunities to bring back beloved brands and customer feedback, and it is important in shaping those discussions." So, if you'd like to order the beer, the last batch will be available for pre-order on May 23rd on Wisconsin Brewing Company's website, according to the outlet. The beer then will be available on June 27th. So what is Schlitz? You have to ask. Schlitz began in 1849 as a tavern brewery owned by August Krug, according to the Journal-Sentinel. After Krug died in 1856, Joseph Schlitz, the company's bookkeeper, bought the company and renamed it. Schlitz died at sea 5 years later, but the company was acquired as the city's brewing industry exploded. This made the company one of the country's largest beer companies. Still, the company faced stiff competition from rival brands, Miller and Pabst. In 1981, Schlitz announced it would cease operations before Pabst Brewing Company purchased the company in 1999. It relaunched in 2008, but did not reach the popularity it once had, prompting the company to discontinue the brand this month. Some people might remember the beer being tied to the popular 1970 sitcom Laverne and Shirley, which was set in Milwaukee. In the show, the main characters worked on the factory line at fictional Schatz Brewery, widely considered to be inspired by Schlitz. Fans mourned the loss of the beer on social media. Bob McKinley wrote about his Schlitz memories on Facebook. In 1982, he rode the daily commuter rail from Union Station in Washington, D.C. to Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. When he arrived at the station early, he grabbed 2 thirst-quenching Schlitz draft beers to lessen the intensity of the summer heat. John Gray said the beer was one of the first he'd ever tasted when he was young and dumb, he added. Thanks for the memories, Schlitz. Well, I know if my dad was here, he'd be shedding a few tears. Schlitz will ring the bell for you. Well, we continue with the opinion section for USA Today for Friday, May 22nd. We have an opinion piece entitled, "I Am Climbing Cringe Mountain Via Poetry, and I Like the View." This is written by Drew Atkins, who is an opinion digital producer for USA Today. Just post it. I'm not sure if I'm saying this to the wannabe poet or the Gen Zer or millennial whose fear of invoking cringe leaves their finger quaking over the upload button, but my message is the same. At the beginning of April, National Poetry Month, I decided to get vulnerable, to embrace creativity and face any self-imposed or perceived external rejection. I would write and post a poem as a daily exercise. For the past month, my journal factory exploded, and it felt incredible. The majority of my generational cohort is outright afraid to be cringe. The stomach-dropping, flinch-inducing secondhand embarrassment of someone breaking a cultural norm. In our modern mimetic society, this is as much the cultural pendulum swinging the other way from the late 2000s era of quirk and individuality as it is a consequence of our social media panopticon. For example, cringe is when you post a picture to your Instagram story with an ugly font or the wrong song widget. It's when I can see your arm propping up your phone at the beginning of every TikTok video you make instead of editing it out. It's when you post to Facebook multiple times a day with all the details of your lives. Real ones remember the Minions memes and yearn for a simpler time in our algorithms. In a sense, everything you do could be cringe. My question to you, so what if it is? Why should you bend to my judgment? Why should you, or I, or anyone else, live beholden to the judgments of people who aren't living in our daily lives? Living in fear of cringe stunts emotional connection, makes us take fewer risks, and feeds social anxiety. In a recent Yahoo poll, 55% of 18 to 29-year-olds said fearing cringe prevented them from opening up to another emotionally. Others passed on romance, professional opportunities, and hobbies. My poetry, when I started, was the rawest expression of myself. It felt like if someone scrolled by without clicking like, or without pausing to read my latest poetry dump, they were rejecting a part of me. What I found, though, was that I increasingly cared less about that. In fact, I felt more empathetic. We all live our own lives. Perhaps my melodrama didn't resonate with them, or they were busy, or they didn't see it, or, what the heck, they didn't care. Eventually, that sting faded and shifted into something else entirely. Immersion in my own real life. In creative slumps, my work became more meditative, drawing from the specificity around me. The way my dog's ears framed her face when she stooped to sniff a spot of dirt. The green near the rind of a melon. I took workshops, read more, asked for feedback, and even submitted a few pieces. I connected with new friends and allowed myself to dream on and off the page, finally free on some level from the oppressive angst of perception that had dried up the ink of my pen. I also understand my posts average maybe 6 likes in an attention economy, and there are certainly risks with seeking validation or growth through an unreliable algorithm, or even one dedicated to manipulating your feelings. There are also some things that are just for you. Interrogate the source of your cringe. For me, it was shame. and mentally shaming others created the delusion that I was somehow above exactly what I projected onto them. I wasn't, and I was lonelier for it. And after a month of posting the most soul-bearing, cringe-inducing, sometimes if not often sloppily constructed stanzas, I felt better about myself and the people who live in the world with us. They call it Cringe Mountain. It feels like I'm climbing. There's something to think about. You are listening to reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Network, and the time is 35 minutes after the hour. And it's Friday, so we go turn over to the money section, which, as you now know, is basically the travel and tourism section. But we have somewhat of a news-related stories. Cruising Altitude, written by USA Today travel columnist Zach Wichter. Issues with Boeing 737 MAX appear to be fixed. Aboard a Boeing 737 MAX, I finally had my first flight on a Boeing 737 MAX after years of covering the history of the plane. I wasn't nervous, and you shouldn't hesitate to fly in one either. The Boeing 737 MAX is probably the most important plane in my career. 2 successive crashes of this aircraft type in 2018 and 2019 were major news events that set me up to cover aviation. With the launch of United Airlines' seasonal daily nonstop service between Newark, New Jersey and Glasgow, Scotland, I finally had a chance to fly aboard the plane that has been so instrumental in my career. Despite its tarnished early service history, the 2 crashes combined killed 346 people, the MAX has proven a capable plane. The global 37 MAX fleet has already logged hundreds of thousands of flight hours, according to aviation analytics company Cirium, and after working out the significant early technical issues, has become a safe way to fly the friendly skies. Here's how we got there, and why I wasn't afraid about taking my first 737 MAX flight. The Boeing 737 MAX was developed to help Boeing compete with Airbus. The 737 family of airplanes had, for decades, been the best-selling single-aisle jet in the world, though Airbus got a big up on Boeing when it introduced its A320neo family of jets. The A320 was Airbus's answer to the 737, and the Neo, designating new engine option, was a more fuel-efficient version of the European manufacturer's jet. Boeing did not want to get left behind as orders for the Neo surged, and didn't want to take time to design a whole new aircraft from scratch. So Boeing modified the decades-long 737 design to be longer, with larger engines that were mounted higher and farther forward on the wings. Those engines made the new generation of 737s more fuel efficient, but also changed the jet's flying characteristics. To compensate, Boeing quietly introduced the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, or MCAS, a computer program that helped the new 737s fly more like their predecessors, reducing the need for costly additional training for pilots. That system, however, would prove fatal. MCAS relied on just one sensor for an important data input and could override pilot commands to control the aircraft. Those glitches were at the center of 2 fatal crashes early in the 737 MAX service life. In 2024, another Boeing 737 MAX lost a piece of its fuselage shortly after takeoff, adding further scrutiny to the troubled jet. The first crash, a Lion Air flight in Indonesia in 2018, killed 189 people. Boeing and regulators insisted that it was a tragic coincidence, but when a second MAX crashed in Ethiopia just a few months later, killing 157, it was clear there was a problem. Ultimately, the global 737 MAX fleet was grounded from March 2019 to November 2020 as Boeing and regulators addressed the flight control issues. Boeing didn't provide a new statement for this column, but the company has previously emphasized how it was improving safety on the 737 MAX production line, including by enhancing training and eliminating defects earlier in the manufacturing process. Subsequently, the plane returned to service and has not had significant safety issues since. For United Airlines, the 737 MAX was an obvious choice for its seasonal daily flight from Newark to Glasgow. With its greater fuel efficiency compared to previous 737 generations, the MAX is able to fly farther than its predecessors. With Glasgow's medium-sized market, the 166-seat 737 MAX 8 is the best option right now to serve the market efficiently. It is also a great match for the demand profile, which includes primarily leisure travelers with some business travel. Matt Stevens, United's International Network Vice President, told me in an email. We always try to match our aircraft to the dynamics of the market, figuring out what option best suits our customers' needs while remaining economical. Economy passengers get a standard seat and meal, but premium cabin passengers should be aware that the plane is configured primarily for domestic flights, meaning there are no lie-flat seats on the overnight leg to Europe. So you ask, is the 737 MAX safe to fly? Without hesitation, I can say yes. That's not to minimize the tragedies of the early 737 MAX crashes, but to acknowledge that Boeing, airlines, and regulators took those events seriously and addressed the problems. My flights to and from Scotland were smooth, and if it had not been for the safety card that said 737 MAX on the front cover, I could have easily forgotten what kind of plane I was flying on. It's easy to be nervous about flying on an airplane type that has been involved in high-profile disasters, but passengers should rest assured that there's no need to be concerned. The aviation industry as a whole prioritizes safety, and the Boeing 737 MAX would not be used on hundreds of flights every day if it were not ultimately a safe plane. Around the world. It only took them 12 days to visit every Disney park on Earth. This is by USA Travel columnist Eve Chen. Brent Hopper and his kids can claim something few Disney fans can. We did every ride, every park in under 12 days, he said. Not just at Walt Disney World, but at Disney parks around the world. The Florida father attempted it twice with his two oldest kids, Tanner and Peyton, while his then toddlers stayed home with his wife. The Hoppers didn't quite make it to every ride on their first try in 2023. The competitor in myself was like, all right, I need to redeem it, Brent said. I need to do this again. Running on Mickey ice cream bars and outside motivation, they succeeded in 2024. Why they did it? Brent said he had toyed with the idea on a family trip to Asia years ago, but he was inspired to try it after Nathan Firesheets rode every ride across all 12 Disney parks within 12 days in 2023. I've been to Disney many times. I could do this, no problem, and then some, Brent recalled thinking of the unofficial challenge. After all, he'd grown up going to Disney World and worked there as a cast member before becoming a commercial airline pilot. He still visited the parks often. His kids were seasoned park goers and travelers too. I was excited, but also I didn't know how that was going to work, said Tanner, 17. His 15-year-old sister, Peyton, said, I thought it was crazy. and not possible at all. So for extra motivation, Brent made their attempt a fundraiser for Give Kids the World Village, a Central Florida nonprofit that partners with theme parks to fulfill wishes for families with critically ill children. Seeing what we're raising the money for, it definitely kind of opened my eyes a bit, Tanner said after they visited the village. So how did they do it? Americans can visit China visa-free for up to 10 days if transiting to a third country or if transiting to a third country on the same trip. But the Hoppers already had 10-year visas from prior travel. They were able to fly between resorts using Brent's airline benefits, which helped them save money but added stress and didn't always work out. On their first go-round in 2023, they couldn't get seats on a flight from Shanghai to Hong Kong, so they flew to Shenzhen instead and wound up taking a taxi to Hong Kong for about $75. On their second attempt in 2024, Brent said they got the last 3 seats on a flight from Paris to Shanghai. Peyton recalls just barely getting any sleep sometimes because we would have a flight that would get in super late and then we'd have to go to another park the next day or that morning. Most of the time, they would catch a cab or a rideshare to the hotel. But once, they went directly from the airport to Hong Kong Disneyland and stored their bags with the resort's luggage storage. In the parks, they saved time wherever they could, using such tools as lightning lanes or Premier Access to shorten their wait times at attractions when available. They also stuck to quick service dining and snacks. Even so, they still couldn't get to every ride on their first try without risking throwing off their tight travel schedule. You have to keep going, said Brent, who was in charge of logistics. It was like doing a marathon or ultramarathon or something like that. On both attempts, they took a photo to each attraction and posted it on X. Their trips followed roughly the same schedule, but on the first trip, they took a rest day at home in Orlando, Florida, before tackling Disney World. On the second trip, they spent an extra day in Tokyo to make sure to get to the rides they missed the first time instead of taking a rest day. Both times, they lost time flying to China because of the time difference, but they would gain it back flying back to the United States. And their 2023 itinerary, days 1 and 2, both Disneyland Paris parks, then travel to Shanghai. Day 3, Shanghai Disneyland, travel to Hong Kong. Day 4, Hong Kong Disneyland, travel to Tokyo. Days 5 and 6, both Tokyo Disney parks, then travel to Los Angeles. Days 7 and 8, both Disneyland parks, then travel to Orlando. Day 9, rest day at home. Days 10 and 12, all 4 Disney World parks. Brent tallied it up and counted nearly 31 hours of flying on the second trip with 100 hours in parks. Tanner said the hard part was just trying to keep going while I'm tired and everything's falling apart. I did not realize how hard this is going to be, mentally, physically, Brent echoed, saying the first trip smacked them in the face. Your body can fall apart pretty quickly, whether it's sleep deprivation, the amount of steps we did through the whole thing, and then the rides, just nonstop. Brent got more supportive shoes for their second attempt in 2024, and he and Tanner brought extra insoles and socks. Peyton said when she felt drained, she would remember their cause. Ice cream also helped. Honestly, the Mickey ice cream bars kept me going. Those are so good, she said. I survived on those multiple days. The Hoppers visited all 12 parks within 12 days on both trips, but they came up 9 rides short across Disneyland Paris and 7 rides short at Tokyo Disneyland in 2023. It was definitely a little annoying, Peyton said. I felt a little bit of like defeat because we just couldn't complete that goal. They rode all 217 rides worldwide in their 2024 trip. Knowing that the second time around that we actually did everything in every park, it felt much better, Tanner said. They raised more than $5,000 for Give Kids the World Village across both trips. Brent hopes they raised awareness too. Obviously, people are like, you guys are crazy. But you know what? What you're doing is amazing, he said. As new Disney attractions open, he's open to trying the challenge a third time. He thinks Tanner would join him, but Peyton would have to be convinced. So, where are the 12 Disney parks located? There's the original Disneyland Park and Disneyland Adventure in Anaheim, California. Walt Disney World's Magic Kingdom, Epcot, Disney's Hollywood Studios, and Disney's Animal Kingdom are located near Orlando. Tokyo Disneyland and Tokyo Disney Sea are technically located outside Tokyo in Urasio, Japan. Similarly, Disneyland Paris Disneyland Park and the recently reimagined Disney Adventure World are in Chessy, France, outside Paris. Hong Kong Disneyland is located on Hong Kong's Lantau Island. Shanghai Disneyland is located in Shanghai's Pudong Park. How much would it cost to visit all 12 Disney parks? Brent estimates he spent about $10,000 on both trips, even with his airline benefits. That includes park tickets, lodging, meals, ground transportation, and incidentals for all three people. Disney ticket prices vary by date. At Disney World, they also vary by park. The latest prices and promotions can be found on each resort's website. In some cases, it can be cheaper to buy multiple one-day, one-park tickets than multi-day passes, which may include higher price dates because of their longer validity windows. So there you have it. I don't know, I kind of think about that $10,000 for both trips, but they said they did it, so I guess we have to believe they did it. Broken mobility scooter disappoints advocate. When Maria Town got off her flight to New Orleans, she wasn't surprised her mobility scooter was damaged. She was still disappointed. I chose my mobility aid because of how easy it is to get and how easy it is to replace. This is not the first time my scooter has been broken by an airline, and it won't be the last, she told USA Today. My choice of my mobility aid is directly informed by my experience of it being broken during air travel. Town is the president and CEO of the American Association of People with Disabilities and has cerebral palsy. She traveled from Washington, D.C. to New Orleans on Southwest Airlines on April 8th for a work engagement, but when she arrived, her scooter wouldn't power on. It looked, at first glance, it looked fine, so I did most of the things that you're supposed to do. I reset the circuit breaker and the battery. I physically took out the battery and put it back in. It would not turn out. Southwest staff also tried to take the device apart, and Town eventually realized that a wire had likely been disconnected in transit. Sure enough, on the bottom of the scooter, a major wire was just pulled out, she said. It took about a month for her scooter to be repaired. Town's claim with the airline was closed on April 24th. Town had a loaner available to her when she returned home on April 9th. The expectation is that the customer will take their broken or damaged device with them to their destination, she said. What am I going to do with a completely inoperable scooter? Town added that in an emergency, it can be difficult for people who rely on mobility devices to organize a loaner outside of business hours. A huge issue with durable medical equipment providers is that they're really only open between 9 to 5. If you need a device before 9 a.m. or after 5 p.m., it's really hard to find. Southwest Airlines acknowledged they had been in contact with Town following the incident. While we do not comment publicly on individual customers' experiences, we have been in direct contact with this customer to resolve the situation. We are committed to providing a safe, welcoming, and accessible travel experience for all, including customers with disabilities who travel with assistive devices, the airline told USA Today. Our teams work hard every day to support customers with care and respect throughout their travel journey, and we continuously look for opportunities to improve customers' travel experiences. Town said she was frustrated with Southwest's slow response and felt that she got the attention she did because of her high-profile advocacy role. You are listening to reading of articles and features from USA Today for Friday, May 22nd on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We will return for more readings after this short break. Your reader for this hour has been me, Chet Walczak. I appreciate your time in joining us. And as we enter this Memorial Day weekend, let us remember and pray for all those who paid the ultimate price to give us the great country we have, the freedom we enjoy, and the lives we hope to do better. Take care. We'll catch you the next time.
now with a reading of articles from today's issue of the USA Today. Your reader for this hour is Nancy. So we're on to section B, which is life. I've got one from movies. Best dad in Star Wars may just be Pedro Pascal, from Brian Truitt. The Star Wars franchise doesn't have the greatest history when it comes to space dads. Anakin Skywalker, anyone? Still, Pedro Pascal puts them all to shame. Over 3 seasons of the Disney Plus series, The Mandalorian, plus the Book of Boba Fett, Pascal's armored Din Djarin is a Mandalorian bounty hunter, whose target turns out to be a cute green alien child. Their connection is immediate, kicking off a story that finds the Mando going from protector of this little guy Grogu to mission teammate to adopted father. Their relationship continues to evolve in the new Star Wars movie, The Mandalorian and Grogu, in theaters May 22nd, where the dynamic duo hunt Imperial warlords and finds Grogu taking on a surprising role as a protector himself. What fascinates Pascal the most about their relationship is you have this special kind of green creature that is adorable, with little sharp teeth and obvious Dumbo-sized ears and claws, and these big round eyes. It's just immediately disarming, he says. And then this man in head-to-toe armor, just fortified with weapons. Interestingly, you can't see his face, and there's nothing more intimidating, or just cool and mysterious about this person. Pascal harks back to the first meeting between these two characters, with Mando putting out his finger toward Grogu's cradle and the child meeting it with his. Instantly, in a gesture, there's something so human that you feel, the actor says. You learn right away, or are reminded at least, that there's a human heart beating underneath all of that Beskar armor. That is the best thing about Star Wars, because it's everything that the imagination is capable that doesn't exist in our world, but is a reflection of the world that we live in. All of that humanity and fight for the good is in the Star Wars tradition. The Mandalorian Creed, a code of honor that includes never removing their helmets in front of a living being, also has led to the character's incremental revelation, to audiences as well to Grogu. Pascal explains, the first time his helmet came off in Season 1, it's so that he doesn't die. A droid heals him after he suffers a gnarly head injury. In the penultimate Season 2 episode, the Mando doesn't hesitate for a second to take his helmet off for an Imperial face scanner, because it's something he has to do to save the child's life, Pascal adds. And in the season finale, as Grogu is about to leave to train with Luke Skywalker, Mando removes his headgear and shows his face to say goodbye. In those helmet removal scenes, the complexity of that kind of nakedness was a fascinating acting experience for me, Pascal says. What would it be like to feel that naked emotionally and psychologically? The stakes would be so high simply because somebody is actually looking you in the eyes. That was really cool. Off-screen, Pascal is pretty proud to see how popular his space son has become, winning over hearts as well as red carpets. The 51-year-old Star Wars as a kid when the original Star Wars movie came out. And think about how in love we were with R2-D2. That was like a moving trash can. Not to insult, I mean, he's like everybody's favorite character, Pascal says. And I saw Gremlins in the movie theater. Gizmo is one of my favorite characters from my childhood. To me, there's something so wonderfully nostalgic and relatable, and really lovely to watch everyone collectively just melt around this wonderful, creative creation and character. Streaming preview. Ghost War goes for action over Krasinski's Everyman, from Brian Truitt. Tom Clancy's literary all-American action hero, Jack Ryan, saved the world in quite a few movies, played by a bunch of A-listers, before coming to TV. He's returned to film, and it's not a great move, honestly. John Krasinski reprises his role in Amazon's Jack Ryan series as the globe-trotting CIA analyst / field operative in Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan, Ghost War. 2 stars, rated R, streaming now on Prime Video. It's a mouthful of a title for a thriller that's got plenty of spycraft, intergovernmental, trust issues, and stuff blowing up, but isn't very deep. At least Krasinski, as the likable everyman, gives Ghost War enough of a moral center and steely presence to stick with the dad movie narrative. After 4 seasons of dealing with drug cartels, terrorist organizations, political warfare, and a nuclear bomb, Ghost War catches up with Jack, now a civilian with a rather safe gig in New York City. Still, he misses being in the field, which is what longtime friend James Greer, played by Wendell Pierce, deputy director of the CIA, figures. He wants Jack to meet a guy in Dubai with the barest of intel, and although at first reluctant, Jack teams up with another pal, ex-CIA operative Mike November, played by Michael Kelly, to suss out the situation. Of course, everything goes sideways quickly. A sniper kills the dude Jack's supposed to meet right in front of him, chain smoking. M16 agent Emily Marlowe gets involved, and Jack begins to get the full intel on the situation. Starling, a black ops squad formed decades ago to take out terrorist plots that ultimately was shut down by Greer, has been resurrected for vengeful purposes by British war hero Liam Crown, played by Max Beesley. It's up to Jack and company to stop him before something extremely bad happens to a London landmark. Directed by Andrew Bernstein, Ghost War certainly delivers on the action element, but suffers from the same aspect that plagues another show-turned movie out this week, The Mandalorian and Grogu. It's like a streamlined season of the series that takes out all the interesting character development and evolving plot threads in favor of the pew 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 and crash boom bang. That's more forgivable with the Star Wars jam, not so much with Jack Ryan, a spy drama that let Jack cook in long-form storytelling. He still gets moments to analyze problems and hold power to account, but there's too little of what made the show so immersive and watchable. It's a shame since Krasinski, also a producer and co-writer on Ghost War, is by far our best Jack Ryan. High-profile names, Alec Baldwin, Harrison Ford, Ben Affleck, and Chris Pine have played Clancy's signature character in movies since 1990. But the show really let Krasinski tap into Jack's brain and thoughtfully explore what it would look like for someone to be pulled from desk duty and thrown into extraordinary circumstances on a global scale. Without that, Ghost War is just another by-the-numbers franchise movie. Moving back to that, after seeing what worked so well in a TV run, makes one think they don't know Jack. When is the new Jack Ryan? Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan Ghost War is now streaming on Amazon's Prime Video. It's rated R by the Motion Picture Association for violence and language. Seasons 1 to 4 of the Jack Ryan series are also streaming on Prime. National Memorial Day Concert. Veterans past and present take center stage, from Brian Alexander. Gary Sinise will take the rare opportunity to thank a Pearl Harbor hero in person this Memorial Day weekend. Forrest Gump star Sinise, age 71, will honor the 102-year-old Navy veteran Chuck Kohler, one of 117 remaining survivors of the Pearl Harbor attack 85 years ago. on the west lawn of the U.S. Capitol. The moment will be one of many televised tributes to those who wore the uniform, present or not, during PBS's National Memorial Day concert on May 24th, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific, times may vary, which Sinise will co-host with actor Joe Mantegna. We're losing 1,000 World War II veterans every single day, so time is short, says Sinise, whose portrayal of wounded veteran Lieutenant Dan in 1994's Forrest Gump propelled the Academy Award-nominated actor to a next-level Veterans Advocate status. This is the nation's opportunity on live TV to honor their service. The opportunities that we have to bring them together are increasingly special. The 37th annual concert is a nonpartisan event that has never hosted the sitting U.S. President. President Donald Trump will not attend this year. The memorial concert during the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence is about giving thanks to people who sacrificed for their country. This isn't a political thing. It doesn't matter who's in the White House, the Senate, or the House, Sinise says. We're divided over many things, but everyone can recognize that we have a responsibility to recognize the men and women who put their lives on the line to defend us. A special tribute to Niece's composer's son, Mac. There also will be musical acts at the tribute. Country stars Mickey Guyton, Jamie Johnson, who served 8 years in the Marine Corps Reserve, and Alan Jackson will have their turns on stage. Under the direction of veteran conductor Jack Everly, the National Symphony Orchestra will perform pieces that include 2 written by Sinise's composer's son, McKenna, Anthony Mac Sinise, who died in 2024 of chordoma, a rare bone cancer. This is very special, Sinise says. I'm so proud to have 2 of my son's works played by the National Symphony Orchestra. Concert will honor veterans with Noah Weil and Melissa Leo. The annual Pre-Memorial Day TV showcase features stars highlighting veteran stories from past conflicts, including the 1776 American Revolution. The pit star and executive producer Noah Weil will bring to life militiaman Joseph Plum, Martin's story fighting under General George Washington. Oscar winner Melissa Leo will account of the actions of retired General Patricia D'Aurora, who rushed into rescue mode during the September 11th attack on the Pentagon. Vietnam War veterans and Gold Star families, representing more than 1 million men and women who have given their lives, also will receive tributes. Commemorating the 85th anniversary of Pearl Harbor, Breaking Bad star Jonathan Banks will tell World War II hero Koehler's story, which reads like a Hollywood movie. At age 16, Koehler convinced his dad to sign his enlistment form to enter the Navy on April 3, 1941. On December 7th, the first bomb from a Japanese pilot hit near the hangar where Koehler was writing a letter home, sending window glass into his head, neck, and shoulders. Koehler and another sailor mounted a .50 caliber machine gun on a nearby American plane and emptied round after round of ammunition into the attacking aircraft. To bookend the experience, Koehler ultimately witnessed the surrender of a Japanese garrison in August 1945 after being deployed to the Marshall Islands Pacific Campaign. Visiting Pearl Harbor's 68 years after the attack, Koehler made a vow to continue the remembrance to the comrades he lost. Each December 7th, the centenarian lights a beacon at the top of California's Mount Diablo to keep their memory alive. In March, Koehler received an internet viral half-court tribute at a Michigan State University basketball game, featuring the team's forward and great-grandson, Jackson Koehler. Chuck's in great shape and he'll be there, says producer Michael Colbert, whose late father, Jerry Colbert, started the concert in 1989. It's so important that we never forget. Chuck was part of the greatest generation that saved the world. We're blessed to still have him with us. You're listening to a reading of today's issue on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time's 11:33 after the hour. Here's a story from books. Underwood reflects on fatherhood in letter, from Madeline Mitchell. Colton Underwood wanted to be a dad since he was a little boy. In his new audio-only memoir, Dear Bishop, A Letter to My Son, out now from Hachette Audio, he recalls his second-grade teacher asking the class to write down what they wanted to be when they grew up. When his teacher advised him to ditch NFL player for something more realistic, he wrote stay-at-home dad. At 34, both his grade school dreams have become realities. The former NFL player, who starred in The Bachelor before coming out as gay in 1921, married Jordan C. Brown in 2023, and the two became parents to their son Bishop in 2024. Coming up on his second Father's Day as a dad, Underwood sat down with USA Today to talk about his new memoir and what fatherhood has taught him so far. Nothing can prepare you for this, Underwood said. What I've learned is I have a new baby every 2 weeks. You know, our child is developing, and most babies develop at this rate where it's like, whoa, you can do that now? Okay. Being a dad, he said, is the purest love and joy and just happiness that I've ever experienced in my life. In his memoir, Underwood reveals his participation in The Bachelor and The Bachelorette was a misguided attempt at self-conversion therapy. He talks about lying to friends and family about his love life, sneaking away to meet up with men in his college days, and an attempt to end his own life over the shame and guilt he experienced in those years. He would bargain with God. He said, begging to be heterosexual. He didn't think he could be gay and be a father, he tells USA Today. I didn't know it was possible, he said. Once he started to come out to his friends and family, he said, he realized, if I do come out, I'm actually not giving up on my dreams of becoming a dad. I think that was one of the hardest negotiations that I had to have with myself. There was representation of same-sex couples being parents, he said, using actor Neil Patrick Harris, who shares twins with husband David Burtka, as an example. But he didn't really know or look for those role models at the time, Underwood says. He remembers his first date with Brown, when they shared their passion about becoming dads. That's when it all clicked, and Underwood recalls thinking, we can really do this. But even after he came out and started dating Brown, Underwood said his road to fatherhood wasn't easy. He talked openly about his infertility struggles while he and Brown were trying to become fathers, and launched a podcast, Daddyhood, so other hopeful parents wouldn't feel alone. After making some lifestyle and medication changes and relying on an egg donor and surrogate, Underwood and Brown became fathers in 2024. There's so much thought and intention that goes into having a baby when you're a same-sex couple, Underwood said, adding that he has faced financial barriers to growing his family, too. We for sure want another baby, if not two more. His faith remains important, Underwood says, but his relationship to religion has changed since coming out and becoming a dad. My idea of faith might not look like it once looked, he said. I've really felt the more out of that I have become, the better my relationship with God has become. It isn't conditional anymore. What's next for Underwood? Underwood said his social media posts often are breeding grounds for hateful comments from people who don't agree with same-sex couples having families. I'm in an era where I'm really trying to do my best to protect my peace, Underwood says. He wants to continue sharing his story and being a role model in the LGBTQ plus community. But it does get tough. Our son has two loving parents, he says, and two parents that are doing everything in our power to take care of him, to raise him, to give him a great life. But to the really aggressive haters, Underwood said, we just sort of ignore it and let that go. These days, he's more comfortable living outside of the spotlight. He and Brown recently co-founded a child skincare brand, Toddle. I'm doing a lot more producing. I'm doing a lot more directing and creative directing these days. And I'm much more fulfilled by it, he said. It really is so exciting for me to be able to tap into my creative side without feeling like I have to give all of myself to the world. Music. Older Rejects Still Bringing Down the Houses, from Melissa Ruggieri. A year ago, the All-American Rejects returned to Zeitgeist in a most unusual way, showing up in backyards, barns, and living rooms around the country to play free shows packed with spunky guitar rock. These guerrilla pop-ups launched the Heartland Quartet, singer Tyson Ritter, lead guitarist Nick Wheeler, rhythm guitarist Mike Kennedy, and drummer Chris Gaylor, into a world of TikToks and Instagram posts, simultaneously cultivating a fan base decades younger than the now middle-aged rockers. That success has been parlayed into a resurrection that resulted in playful appearances with the equally iconoclastic barnstorming baseball team Savannah Bananas, an opening stint for the Jonas Brothers, and the completion of All-American Rejects' first album of new material in almost 14 years, Sandbox, out now. Though they still relish playing their zingy earworms, Swing Swing, Move Along, and Give You Hell, the band is psyched to add new tunes, including King Kong and Clothesline, to their set lists. They also are ready to share some deeper emotions, as Ritter does in the poignant For Mama and Green Isn't Yellow. Ritter and Wheeler recently talked in separate interviews with USA Today about what is still driving the All-American Rejects. Question: now that you've been doing the house parties for a year, what has evolved in the process? Tyson Ritter: the first time we did it was a lot of reacting to things we didn't prepare for, and this time we came prepared. We're still refining and learning how to keep our audiences safe. We had a pop-up recently in Albuquerque. That was staggering, with 2,000 people, and there were still 4,000 or more outside the gate. People were complaining about people cutting in lines, but are people blaming Walmart for the line outside at a Black Friday sale? It's almost a social experience when we gather. How kind can we be to each other? There are occasional bad eggs who break a neighbor's fence or cut the line, but it's a universally positive experience. How's everyone holding up with the physical side of touring, especially since you don't usually have glamorous accommodations? Nick Wheeler: it's exhausting. I'm not falling apart, but I prioritize sleep and moving my body, whether working out or just stretching, and taking my daily coffee pilgrimage, which is part of keeping me sane. The bus is grueling, and I make sure on stage to have my rig under my feet so concrete stages don't kill me. But once the music starts, it doesn't feel like I'm in my mid-40s. What's the most chaotic house party you've ever played? Ritter: every time we do one of these, I could say last night. All I can say, it's been a really cool thing. It's bigger than a house party right now. It's about exposing the underbelly of the world and these kids who had the trauma of the COVID-19 pandemic can be lifted into a gathering that isn't completely the protocols of these big venues. Everybody paid the same amount to get in, which is nothing. There's no elitist sectioning or dynamic pricing. Last summer, the band opened for the Jonas Brothers on a major tour in the midst of playing house parties. What was the transition like? Ritter, the Jonas Brothers are great as humans, and the show they run is fan-centric. Jonas is such a sweetheart. But that tour was such a juxtaposition from the house parties. It was like we had a swath of the U.S., the haves and the have-nots, and the have-littles, and the people who pay $2,000 for floor seats, like at any big arena concert. That crowd, for an opening band, is a different experience than going to a person's house and offering a free experience and asking for nothing but their time. Tyson, you and your friend Brian Batyer launched the digital platform Playhouse to connect artists with alternative venue spaces. Do you think it could replace traditional touring? Ritter, this DIY scene has always been there. A Facebook page, a Reddit thread. Now we have a central place for this real market. The House of Blues in Anaheim, California is $40,000 to rent, and a band that sells out. When you split the money 5 or 6 ways and give 20% to management, that keeps bands off the road. We have 6,000 artists signed up on Playhouse and more than 3,000 unique venues they can play, from a high-rise apartment in Chicago to churches and breweries. Disruption is the nature. So how are artists making any money with this if fans are coming to the house parties for free? Ritter, with sponsorships. And yes, you can look at it as bowing to a sponsor. But this to me is the way. All artists take sponsorships, and 99% pocket that money on top of ticket sales. Let's talk about AAR's first new album in almost 14 years. Was there a point you thought the band had said everything it needed to? Wheeler, yeah, absolutely, especially coming off Kids in the Street in 2012. It didn't do well, and we had a very high expectations. But the week it came out, half the people at our label got fired, and it fell flat. We took a beating with that, and it had been a decade of doing the same thing, writing, recording, touring, and doing it all over again. We were just burned out. We devoted all of our 20s to this band and had a lot of growing up to do and soul-searching and personal lives to figure out. I started therapy and figuring out our own stuff in our 30s. The songs For Mama and Green Isn't Yellow seem particularly personal. What's the backstory? Ritter, this whole record is like a daydream of the past 15 years of us as a band and me personally growing. There was a moment when growing apart from this band was a very real thing. And as we grow, family is super complicated. There's a family member in my life going through a lot who put us all kind of through it. That was the realest thing. And the music I wrote about it saved me. My mom struggles, and I struggle. Mental health is not a conversation we're afraid to shy away from in this moment. I moved back to Tulsa. It's a quiet city, and in that silence, you can hear the songs of your past. It wasn't hard to find these songs because they wanted to find me. Now we've got Section C, which is sports. Fever can't make same mistake with Clark again, from Nancy Armour. The Indiana Fever must be getting their medical advice from Dr. Google. That's the only explanation that makes sense for how the Fever could be botching the health of Caitlin Clark for a second season in a row. A player so durable she never missed a game in 4 years at Iowa could only make it through the first 4 games of this WNBA season before being sidelined with a bad back. For those keeping track, that's 32 games Clark has already missed in her young career. And this doesn't include the breaks she had to take in the season opener to get back treatment. That isn't normal. An Indiana coach, Stephanie White, trying to claim it signals that the Fever didn't learn a darn thing last year. She's healthy. We're not managing anything, White said after Clark was a late scratch for the Fever's game against Portland on May 20th. This is just a back issue that we want to make sure we give the time to be ready. but White acknowledged that Clark hadn't practiced the day before, spending that time getting treatment instead. Not that the Fever noted on the injury report. Not everybody that doesn't practice or gets a good pro day is on the injury report. That happens all the time, White says. She wasn't listed on the injury report earlier because we expected her to play. There's a disconnect there, just as there was last year, when Clark suffered a series of soft tissue injuries. Despite their protestations to the contrary, it was clear then that Clark was coming back too soon, making her susceptible to the additional injuries. The Fever finally shut her down for the remainder of the season in September. That scenario now feels suspiciously familiar. Clark is, no doubt, lobbying the Fever to let her play. She is as competitive as they come, and she's spoken often of feeling a responsibility to all those people who've paid a lot of money to watch her play. The Fever know there will be more people in the stands and watching on TV if she's playing. But someone has to start being the adult in the Fever's treatment room and their front office. If they're not careful, this is going to be another lost season for the franchise and for Clark. If Clark had a history of back trouble, her leaving the floor twice to get adjusted during the season opener wouldn't have raised eyebrows. She does not, however. Clark and White both brushed it off, and Clark's play over the next 3 seasons didn't raise any additional warning signs. She went off for 32 points in an overtime loss to the Mystics. She had double-doubles in each of her last 2 games and was an assist shy against the Los Angeles Sparks of it being 3 in a row. But now Clark is having to sit out practices and games because her back is again, or still, giving her problems. The time for letting it play out, or taking it day by day, has ended. Clark needs to sit for however long it takes for her back to get right, no matter how many games she has to miss. Clark's status for the May 22nd game against the Golden State Valkyries isn't known yet because the Fever canceled Thursday's practice. Their next injury report was due late Thursday afternoon. A bulky back isn't a broken finger or a sore rib. That is something that, unless managed properly, can be chronic, especially in a league as physical as the WNBA. A bad back can have an impact on her basketball career as well as her life off the floor. Ask a pro how much golf Clark will be able to play with a bad back. But given last season, there's no guarantee the Fever can be trusted to manage this injury properly. No one wants Clark on the bench in street clothes. While she's not the WNBA's only star, she's its biggest star, and there's no question that she is Indiana's biggest draw. But rushing her back for a game or two, if it ends up costing her large chunks of the season, is as short-sighted as it is stupid, and the Fever ought to know this after last season. Get Clark healthy, fully healthy. This is only her 3rd season, which means she has a long and successful career ahead of her, if the Fever don't break her first. Tennis, the French Open. Sinner blazing hot. Goff faces brutal road to repeat. From Scooby Axon. The French Open draw was revealed on May 21st before the tennis tournament gets underway on May 24th. There were few surprises as Jannik Sinner and Aryna Sabalenka secured number 1 seeds for the singles portion of the year's 2nd Grand Slam event. The absence of the defending men's singles champion, Carlos Alcaraz, allows others to try to make a mark, including Sinner. Alexander Zverev and new top 5 seeds, Felix Auger-Aliassime of Canada and American Ben Shelton, who both are looking for their first Grand Slam titles. Shelton hopes to become the first American man to win a Grand Slam since 2003. Coco Gauff is back to defend her title among a strong women's field, with many players having legitimate chances to spring upsets, especially if Gauff struggles with her serve or Sabalenka has an off day. And while the field is strong, another issue looms large over the tournament. Some players plan to protest and limit their media interactions over the prize money offered. Here are some takeaways from the French Open draw. It's Sinner's tournament to lose. Sinner has been on an absolute tear during the clay court season and will look to become the seventh man in the Open era to complete the career Grand Slam if he emerges victorious in Paris. The world's top-ranked player has won 29 consecutive matches, including ATP Masters 1,000 titles at Indian Wells, Miami, Monte Carlo, Madrid, and Rome. And he has a chance to put a stranglehold on the number one ranking, as Alcaraz will not play at Roland Garros or Wimbledon while recovering from a wrist injury. Novak Djokovic is also looking to make history as he seeks his 25th major win. Djokovic's last Grand Slam title was at the 2023 U.S. Open. Djokovic, who has won 3 French Opens, is the tournament's number 3 seed and on the opposite side of Sinner's draw. Those two can only meet if they advance to the final. Casper Ruud, a 2-time French Open finalist, could await Djokovic in round 4 and Alexander Zverev in a possible semifinal matchup. Gauff faces tough test if she wants to repeat. Gauff beat Sabalenka in last year's final, marred by Sabalenka's comments suggesting her 3-set loss was due to her 70 unforced errors, rather than anything Gauff did to win the match. She later apologized for those comments. Gauff, who lost to Elina Svitolina in the Italian Open final, begins her title defense against fellow American and double savant Taylor Townsend, and if the seeds hold true, will meet Sabalenka in the semifinals. And don't forget about 4-time French Open champ Iga Swiatek, who issued the 3rd seed. She could possibly meet Australian Open champion Elena Rybka in one semifinal should both remain unscathed through that portion of the draw. The NBA playoffs. The biggest issue facing San Antonio, from Lorenzo Reyes. The NBA Western Conference Finals are all knotted up. The Oklahoma City Thunder outlasted the San Antonio Spurs on May 20th in Game 2, 122-113, as the series now heads to San Antonio. 2-time MVP Shai Gilgeous-Alexander bounced back with a 30-point, 9-assist game after he'd struggled with double teams and inefficiency in the series opener. On the other side of that, Spurs phenomenon Victor Wembanyama, 21 points, 17 rebounds, appeared to wear down late in the game as Oklahoma City ramped up its physicality against him. Here are takeaways from Game 2 of the Western Conference Finals. San Antonio turnovers lead to difference. In Game 1, the Spurs committed 21 turnovers against 14 by the Thunder, yielding to a 28-17 deficit in points off of those giveaways. On Wednesday night, it was much of the same. San Antonio turned the ball over 21 times compared to Oklahoma City's 9, leading to a 27-10 Thunder edge and points off turnovers. 14 of those Spurs turnovers were on Thunder steals. The main culprit here is Stephon Castle, who has had a solid series against Oklahoma City. Overall, though, he has committed 20 turnovers across both games. Some of that is because he has been tasked with more ball handling than usual. Starting point guard De'Aaron Fox has missed both games, and Dylan Harper left Game 2 in the third quarter. That has forced Castle to be a primary playmaker. It's a role he's comfortable with in smaller doses, But Spurs coach Mitch Johnson already offered some possible solutions to cut down on those giveaways. We've addressed it and will continue to, in terms of trying to help him with some of his reads, especially when he's tired, Spurs coach Mitch Johnson said after the game. Whether it's playing more off 2 feet or getting off the ball earlier with the early pass and letting the ball find the open man. They do such a great job of showing crowds in the paint and having multiple bodies. So it's just not Steph. He had too many turnovers, but our whole team did. Castle did put the blame on himself, but it's unclear whether Fox or Harper, or both, will miss additional time in the series. And while the Spurs did steal one game on the road, this pace of turning the ball over isn't sustainable for winning. How Oklahoma City defends Victor Wembanyama will define the rest of the series. In Game 1, 12 of Victor Wembanyama's 14 made field goals came inside the restricted area, which is a semicircle that's 4 feet from the center of the rim. Another of those 14 was from just outside the restricted area. And the final one was the logo 3 he hit in the first overtime. In Game 2, the Thunder altered their defensive play on Wembanyama. Whereas in the season opener, Thunder coach Mark Daigneault chose to rotate a platoon of wing players, Alex Caruso and Jalen Williams being the primary ones. Wednesday night, he asked center Isaiah Hartenstein to be the primary defender on Wembanyama. Hartenstein was physical, using his added bulk to displace Wembanyama down low and make it more difficult for him to get clean looks down low. That said, Hartenstein also pushed the limits of what's legal, often grabbing Wembanyama's arms and jersey, pulling him and shoving him around the low block. I thought the other night, and during the regular season, having wings on Wembanyama was effective in the macro, Daigneault said. The other night, he just had way too much at the restricted. Two things that just didn't feel good were his stuff at the rim just felt too sustainable. So we had to make some corrections there. It won't be the last time we have a wing on him. We had a wing on him a couple of possessions tonight. And then the other thing that doesn't feel good is playing Hart 12 minutes. It just didn't feel good to me. And in order to get him extended past 12 minutes, that's the matchup. Wembanyama still did score 21 points on 8 of 16 shooting, and he hauled in 17 rebounds. But the added energy expended to battle Hartenstein appeared to take its toll late in the game. Wembanyama went just 2 of 7 in the fourth quarter, scoring only 4 points. Daigneault added that the Thunder would never commit to having Hartenstein focus on Wembanyama the entire game, but that the injury to Williams prompted Hartenstein to take on the bulk of that responsibility in Game 2. The Spurs will certainly tweak their plan to find ways to get Wembanyama easier offense. The Thunder, in turn, will need to adjust accordingly, because this is the central matchup in the series. Injury management is suddenly going to be a delicate matter. Thunder forward Jalen Williams seemed re-aggravated the left hamstring injury that had kept him sidelined for a month and a half. Spurs rookie guard Dylan Harper left the game in the third quarter with a right leg injury. After the game, there was no definitive update on either, but there's the chance that either or both could now miss extended time in the series. This comes as Spurs point guard De'Aaron Fox has missed both Western Conference Finals games with right ankle soreness. How both teams manage those injuries and navigate any potential substitutions that might need to happen will be significant, because all three are essential to their respective teams. The Spurs are in a particularly precarious situation, as Fox and Harper are often catalysts for the entire offensive operation. Surge leads Knights in West Finals opener from Field Level Media. Colorado worked all season to secure home ice advantage for the NHL postseason. The Vegas Golden Knights ripped it away from the Avalanche in the Western Conference Finals opener. Dylan Coughlin and Pavel Dorevich scored 2 minutes and 33 seconds apart in the second period. Carter Hart made 36 saves, and Vegas beat Colorado 4-2 on May 20th. Game 2 of the best-of-7 series will be played May 22nd, 8 p.m. Eastern, ESPN, in Denver. I think it's sometimes easier for the away teams in these types of situations to play, Vegas coach John Tortorella said. You can use it to your advantage. They understand the situation. Brett Howden also has had a goal, and Nick Dowds scored into an empty net for the Golden Knights, who withstood the Avalanche's third-period rally. Valerie Nishkin and Gabriel Landeskog scored while Scott Wedgwood turned away 24 shots for Colorado, which trails in a series for the first time in this postseason. Vegas captain Mark Stone, lower body injury, and Avalanche defenseman Cale Makar, upper body, were scratched. Koepka post 63 for lead at Byron Nelson, from Tim Schmitz. In advance of his first appearance in 5 years at the CJ Cup Byron Nelson, Brooks Koepka unveiled that he was attempting to rectify putting issues that have plagued him since returning to the PGA Tour by moving to another putter, this time a Scotty Cameron Fastback 1.5. But while good putting certainly helps to recover many ills, there also is another formula for low scoring, hitting it close to the hole. On May 21st, the Florida State product turned TPC Craig Ranch into his personal dartboard, repeatedly stuffing approaches inside 5 feet and removing any real stress from the equation. At a venue known for yielding low numbers, especially under soft conditions, Koepka's formula was simple and effective. Take the putter out of play by never asking it to do much. Koepka finished with a 63 to take the lead after the early wave of play. In the wake of Scotty Scheffler's demolition of TPC Craig Ranch, a record-tying 31 under par total that turned last year's tournament into a shootout, it was clear the course needed a response. Invited, the club ownership group, formerly known as Club Corps, didn't hesitate. They turned to architect and major champion Lanny Watkins with a clear directive: restore some resistance, add bite, and ensure the winning number didn't drift into the 30 under range again. Invited basically, they said, didn't want 30 under winning the thing anymore, Watkins said, recalling the brief. His answer was simple and confident. I told them, don't worry. But Koepka's round might have them worrying. Starting off the back 9, Koepka rolled in a 17-footer for birdie, number 11, and then stuck his approach on number 12 to 13 feet before dropping an eagle putt. He added another birdie on number 14. This time, the approach to just inside 4 feet. And after the turn, he got even better, using approaches inside 4 feet on numbers 5 and 6 to fuel a 63 that tied his best round since coming back to the tour. He fired a 64 during the third round of the One Flight Myrtle Beach Classic earlier this month, on one of 5 top 20 finishes he's posted in 10 starts. He found a bunker on number 18 and was forced to lay up on the second shot of the 554-yard par 5, but he still managed to get to 3 feet and tap in for par. I'm driving the ball fantastic. I feel like I'm in complete control. Ever since Augusta, where we noticed the setting was at a B1 and we switched it back to A1 on that driver, I can work it both ways. The flight's very, very good. Iron play's been fantastic. Koepka said on May 20th. I know maybe last week the stats didn't quite say that they were as good as they were, but it's also tough. Do you get a lie in the rough, and are you able to advance it? Versus some of the pins last week, you weren't able to aim it. But I feel like I'm in complete control of my golf ball. Sharp, shape, spin, trajectory, everything seems to be right when I need it to be. It's just a matter of rolling those putts in. Koepka wasn't the only one in the early waves who toyed with the course. With wet conditions, the PGA Tour put preferred lies into effect, and many in the field seized the opportunity. Emiliano Grillo and Keith Mitchell both posted rounds of 64 to sit at 7 under the opening round of play. Montreal wins PWHL title from Sydney Henderson. The Montreal Victoires are the 2026 PWHL Walter Cup champions. The Ottawa Charge mustered a comeback to force Game 4, but the Victoire wouldn't be denied May 20th. Montreal defeated Ottawa 4-0 in Game 4 of the PWHL Finals at the Canadian Tire Centre in Ottawa to clinch the best-of-5 champion series 3-1. It marks Montreal's first Walter Cup and the first Canadian PWHL champion. Meanwhile, Ottawa has now lost in back-to-back finals appearances. Marie-Philippe Poulin was named the Ilana Kloss playoff MVP after recording 8 points, 6 assists, and 2 goals this postseason. The things that we battled through during these playoffs were just out of the world, said Montreal's Abby Roque, who scored 2 goals, including a jailbreak goal in the third period to free Marie-Philippe Poulin from the penalty box. The amount of heart on this team. I love everybody, and I couldn't be prouder. Maggie Flaherty and Lena Legumblem also scored in the shutout, which equaled the most goals scored in a game against Ottawa in playoff history. Goalkeeper Anne-Renee Deschamps saved all 23 shots on goal. Montreal's Corey Chevret is the first female head coach to win a Walter Cup. How would Picasso paint Wemby? Art, sports, blend with art, but make it sports. From Nancy Armour. You've heard about phones blowing up. Well, LJ Raiders actually did once. He got so many mentions and DMs. He got so many mentions and DMs and new followers that his phone overheated and stopped working. To be fair, it was already low on battery, but still. This is what happens when the NFL asks you, the genius behind the Art But Make It Sports meme account, to do something with a photo of a shirtless Jason Kelce leaning out a stadium window with a beer in his hand, and you respond with Philip DeConnick's The Feast of Bacchus. Your phone and your account that pairs photos of viral sports moments with images of fine art blow up. You're taught you have to pick one. You have to be an athlete or an artist. You can't do both. I've kind of shown people that you can both like art and sport, Raiders said during a talk last week at the Art Institute of Chicago. Art But Make It Sports Wemby pairing goes viral. An Art But Make It Sports meme is going viral again after Victor Wembanyama's monster performance that gave the San Antonio Spurs the double overtime win over the defending champion Oklahoma City Thunder in Game 1 of the NBA Western Conference Finals. Raiders' pairing of a photo of Wemby in front of his delirious teammates with Henry Ossawa Tanner's Angels appearing before the Shepherds has about 40,000 likes and 3,500 shares less than 12 hours after the game's conclusion. Literal perfection with this one friends said of the comments on Instagram. Art But Make It Sports has become a favorite of fans of both art and sports, with more than 1 million followers on X, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. Caitlin Clark and Ben Stiller follow the account, as do most leagues and teams and several art museums. It's quite a change from the account's early days, when Rader was posting into the abyss. Rader has spent his career in sports. He worked at NBC Sports. He won an Emmy as a producer for the network's Olympics coverage, and eventually got into the business side of sports data. But he's been an art fan since he was a kid, when his grandparents would take him to museums and galleries. They also had friends who were yet to be discovered artists, including abstract painter Michael Goldberg. Rader considering minoring in art history at Vanderbilt, but his parents didn't love the idea. Instead, when he traveled the world on work and personal trips, Rader would visit museums and take photos of the paintings and sculptures he saw. One of his folders now has more than 15,000 images of artwork. L.J. Rader started with art imitating sport, then flipped it on its head. In 2019, Rader started posting images of the artwork with sports-related caption. "Let me tell you about my fantasy team," was his caption of Bertolt Waltz's The Irritating Gentleman. By mid-2020, he realized he could pair the artwork with photos of actual sporting events. "I had friends reach out and say, 'You should turn this into a thing,'" Rader said. Art But Make It Sports gradually picked up followers. When Spera Spain, then predominantly with ESPN, mentioned the account, it took off. Now fans, photographers, teams, and leagues will tag Rader when there's a photo they think is a good candidate for Art But Make It Sports. Not everything makes it, of course. Rader doesn't post photos of injuries. The photo has to be funny, like the Kelsey one, or evoke emotion, like the one of Bad Bunny's halftime show at the Super Bowl that was paired with the Sermon on the Mount by Beryl Lewis. And of course, Rader has to have artwork to go with it. Contrary to what many assume, Rader doesn't use AI or a computer program. The memes are all him. Though Rader occasionally will pull from a museum's archive, almost all the artwork he uses is from the collection of images he's taken over the years. After he takes the images, he studies them, cataloging them in his mind. So when he sees a photo from a sporting event, he can recall a specific work of art in his collection, a theme in art, or his favorite, the style of a particular artist. That then tests my knowledge of art history, he says. That tends to be the most gratifying, the most exciting. Though Rader is partial to abstract art, he also loves tavern scenes and the Dutch Golden Age. Basketball is very meme-friendly, while football, soccer, and tennis are less so. He'd love to feature more women's sports, the PWHL in particular, but there aren't as many photos available. Anyone out there, if you're a women's sports fan, feed me images, Rader said. While the Kelsey meme might be the most famous one Rader has done, the NFL is king, after all. His favorite is one he calls the Blue Dunk, a Walter Ios photo of Michael Jordan dunking on a blue court that is paired with Clifford Still's PH 923. People have asked why Rader doesn't try and monetize Art But Make It Sports. He released a coffee table book earlier this year, but that's it. Aside from already having a day job, he just co-founded Fan Flair Sports, a hybrid social media and sports data platform for women's volleyball. Rader does Art But Make It Sports because he loves art and sports, and gets joy when other people do too. If I made it my full-time job, I think that will make it feel like work, he said. At the end of the day, I still kind of think these are my dumb musings. You've been listening to a reading of the USA Today for May 22nd. We read the USA Today weekdays at noon. For more information, call us at 821-5555. Your reader for this hour has been Nancy.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio.
The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a serialized reading of the book